welcome to where the furniture isn't always the best, but them views, they are amazing.
The Black History Month, though, fellas. Typically, I get a little bit more excited around this time of year, but this year it's a little bit different. And you guys let me know your thoughts. Mainly because as you get older and wiser and come out of ignorance and understanding systems and things, um, you know, I started thinking about the little things like February, the shortest month of the year. And then you take it a step further and you start looking at all of the contributions that Black folks, African Americans, have given to history just within itself. It just it's just really unfair to try to pack a whole culture's history that is like truly American history into 1 month. And the way that it's typically celebrated doesn't do enough justice to any one particular or the multiple facets of our history. And so, I've been trying to incorporate a lot more of the general knowledge with my kids and stuff throughout the year, especially as they're going through school and we staying up and knowing what particular segments they have going on. Like, we'll probably get into this a little bit later because I have some thoughts and comparisons, and hopefully I don't get flagged, or we don't get flagged or canceled for talking about the Holocaust in the way that we're going to talk about it. But they just finished the Holocaust segment in the seventh grade class, so trying to get her to understand some of the deeper interworkings of Hitler and how the Holocaust is a snippet in history and how it compares to some of the history of our enslaved folks that were here. And then also just, trying to make sure she stays grounded and connected to her history and not just what, the morning announcement is. Like, they did something on Rosa Parks today, and not taking away from some of our mainstays and staples like the Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King's, et cetera, Carter G. Woodson's, but really trying to focus on the broader aspects of our history and bring that in to our children and helping them understand that it's a little bit bigger than that, and the footprint that we have on this American soil is a lot larger than people would like to let on. So that's kind of my feelings and take on it right now, man. I open the floor to you guys to kind of expound upon that or whatnot, and we go from there.
So I'm sure you guys have all heard about the Whoopi Goldberg Holocaust race thing, where she's gotten, if you haven't heard about it, she's currently been on suspension from The View.
Can you tell us what she actually said? I saw the headline,
but I got suspended.
Yeah, she got suspended. She came back and apologized for how she said it. Not what she said, but how she said it, because
she said the Holocaust was not about race.
Right. And then all the survivors of the Holocaust were like, well, no, Hitler and the Nazis said that their race was better than the Jewish race, so they didn't exterminate the race. The perfect race was blue hair, blonde eye, that whole thing. So it was about that mindset, but how it was delivered. And I get what she was trying to go to, how she was trying to say it, because she was like, hey, there's a Holocaust is a big deal. And I sidestepped that for a second, because EJ is working with the foundations by some way that is the last, called a Black Holocaust, is the last only survivor to survive a lynching ever, just passed away a couple of years ago. So their foundation is trying to get restarted again. And I was just like, well, wait, the Holocaust was Jewish. And she's like, no, Holocaust is not just about one race of people. Holocaust is when you go through, you try to exterminate a people, a race. So I'm like, oh, I got it, where she's kind of come from. And that's probably why she said that in that way, because Holocaust has been deemed Jewish Holocaust, that everyone assumes it's that one thing and that's it. But genocide, Holocaust goes kind of together hand in hand in that mindset. Go ahead, Kay. You're about to give us some knowledge.
All right. So we definitely gonna get banned today. And we may lose some followers. And you know what? That's okay. It's all right. So here's the first thing. You cannot, but I want to go back. No. I want to go back to the Black History thing because we're supposed to be on the Black History first and then go to the Holocaust, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my issue with Black History Month is just in the term Black History Month, because what we tend to do is we only focus on the history. We don't focus on the Black present or the Black future.
Thank you.
Right. And for me, that's a huge disservice because it almost makes it seem like we haven't done anything significant since MLK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, all these inventors, right? Where there are things happening today that are life-changing, not just for the United States, but for the world. And that's the other problem I have, is that in most cases, it's looked at as an African-American holiday, which you cannot look at it as an African-American holiday because we were not African-Americans when we first touched this ground. Mm-hmm. And there are people that continue to make contributions all over the place that they may not be African-American. So just in focusing on the African-American piece, we're not being inclusive of the whole African diaspora, right? And that for me is a problem, and it limits, right, the actual contributions of Black people. Sorry, I know I was talking fast and I went, but.
No, you're good. That's the African-American Studies degree coming out right now. Please, let us go, baby.
You hit it spot on, okay? Because that's the diaspora is the biggest thing, and that's what we gotta highlight, right? Like there's things in American history that people from African descent contributed to. I'm trying to make sure I choose my words correctly because again, when you say stuff, you kind of paint yourself in a corner a lot of times, right? Well, even still, when one of the things I started going back to what we refer to, quote unquote, Black Awareness Month at UM through United Black Students, because one of the first things, Brett, I want to highlight, thank you for talking about what you do with Nia and just and Kelly and them as a whole, is we should be learning, quote unquote, history all year long. February should be the month you celebrate it and share it with the rest of the world who may not be exposed to it or may not have learned everything that you did, right? So Black History months should really be March through January, if you want to think about it, and the celebration and the taking all that information and then giving it back to everybody else. That should be what February is about, the celebration of everything that you learned and you're celebrating and taking part in. Now, I appreciate all the celebrations, all the look back, but again, there's so much more than the MLK, the Rosa Parks. There's so much more. There's so much more that's happening on a daily basis that we just need to celebrate Black excellence and just leave it at that, in my opinion, right? And that contributes everything from the beginning where you can trace things back to. I'm still not all the way through it because I took a break because it's just a lot of information. If you go back to the 1619 project, the book that's out, there's a lot of things in it that just make you think whatever, but you go back to just celebrating Black excellence. That's what the year should be. And Brent, thinking about how that played out in key things in American history, in Caribbean history, in South American history. Like when you get to people of color in this part of the world, mostly because people were put off the ships at different points in the world, point blank.
That's it.
That's the only difference, right? And again, speaking of somebody, I had to learn that and open my eyes more when I came to Miami because, again, I made a mistake. Walk around campus, we all Black. Oh no, you better not say that to the folks from the Caribbean.
Not down there.
Like, because they were taught, don't be like the Black American, right?
Yeah.
That's the bad thing to be. You don't want to be like that. And again, this is my personal experience. I'm not making this up. These are conversations I had with people.
Yeah.
They would tell you, like we were told that if the Black Americans are doing something, you don't want to be associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was reality of thinking back and thinking through, like I had to really adjust my thinking, not that they're wrong and I'm right, but just my thinking of perspective. What are people bringing to the table and what's been fed to them through media? Like I go back to all this thing, talk about the Holocaust, you talk about different things in the world, genocides in the world, period, in history. And bottom line came down, it came to perception of inferiority, and I can never say that right, inferiority of one race, one religion, one group of people to everybody else. But when we talk about what's going on here right now in today's time, it's really that there's certain groups that have never even had the opportunity to even combat it for themselves. And when we do, because I know we're going to get to the critical race theory conversation, right? It's always about making somebody feel guilty. No, it's about telling them the truth. And just being honest about what happened. And then what do we need to do from here on to move forward? And I'm done with that part for now.
So here's the other thing, right? So did you guys know that there's an organization that sets the theme for Black History Month every year?
Yep.
What's the theme this year?
No.
It's Black Health and Wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So BJ said, yep, like real strongly. I didn't know until this year.
I didn't know until just now.
I had no clue.
Right. Never heard of it before.
Yep. I don't know who's on the committee or how they decide, but I heard that quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's why every year you hear
What?
they're going to celebrate something. It's
This
Black
is why
inventors. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
What's the
I
organization?
heard, but I never knew.
Gotta look
I
it
don't
up.
know when that organization started, and I don't know exactly how they pick the members or where those members are from or who they consist of.
And this is the reoccurring theme. Who picked African American? Who picked Afro American?
Yeah, yo, so many times I told my colleagues just like, no, Black American, so American, like African, it's or African or whatever it may be, but like, please don't stutter over the word. Our African American people, like, can you stop? Like, just stop. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing, right? So, African American, for all intents and purposes, is an ethnic group,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like Nigerian is an ethnic group. You know, it's not a race.
But when you're doing for diversity and inclusion, that category is not, oh, they're Nigerian. That's, oh, cool. They fit in the Black African American categories. So that's where they align.
Correct.
It was totally different cultures.
You are absolutely right. And I had to hit somebody over the head with that last week of, hey, they're not.
Carol, can you break down the difference between the ethnicity and the race?
Yeah. So a race basically is hey, you're a descendant of this particular genealogy, this DNA. We can trace you back to this, right? Your ethnic group just happens to be your shared cultures, beliefs, in some cases, your geographical positioning, right? Which would be why we're African American for those of us that were born and grown here. Did that make sense?
Yep.
Right. So just like you have the white race, right? Which there's a number of people that fall under that.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, if you are white and you don't have melanin in your skin, you could be Jewish, but guess what? You're still part of the white race.
Right.
Now, there are some Jewish people that are Black, like Whoopi Goldberg, Sammy Davis Jr. was Jewish.
Oh,
there's a lot more people out there.
Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany Haddish is Jewish?
Yep.
Well, she was raised Jewish by her adopted mother or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she still practices now, but
interesting. That's really interesting. But that's why when we talk about and what Whoopi Goldberg said, I'm just like, okay, well, theoretically, she's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It wasn't really about race. I don't care what Hitler said or what the Nazis said. That's miseducation. That if you now jump up and say, oh, it is. And I think there have been some comments that, oh, but we are a race. that's miseducation.
Not really, but okay.
How is Jewish a race?
That's what I'm saying. It's not a race. That's what I'm agreeing.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's miseducation that was put
Right.
out, right? So the
Right.
Nazis were claiming, oh, the white, pure, blue-eyed is blonde hair, which
Right.
is funny because Hitler didn't have blonde hair from any
Not
pictures.
neither one of them.
He wasn't blue-eyed either.
But again, here goes something that. Why is this happening during Black History Month?
Right. To call attention, pull it away. Mm-hmm.
Right. There's so many Black issues that we could talk about on a daily basis. And are we doing it?
I feel like that every time the Jewish ethnicity and their struggle comes up, it always gets passed over. Like, I feel like when it comes up for a reason, and that's to call attention to some of the disparities that don't get the same attention. And even in Whoopi Goldberg's situation, I haven't read it. I don't want to speak too far on it because I haven't heard context and everything. But it almost sounds similar to what happened to Nick Cannon. And I know she apologized for the way she said what she said, not actually what she said. But it's like, as soon as it comes up, they have to immediately pounce and try to shut down any ulterior narrative that could go against the whole Holocaust and the Jews and that whole situation. And that's very bothersome to me because we're talking about, I think I put it in the group, we're talking about the Holocaust that lasted, 20 something years? I think it was. Maybe. I don't think it was longer than like 30 years. And Germany come to reconcile with the situation. They talked about it. We got museums. They reconciled. We're good. When it comes to Black people, African American, whatever, BIPOC, whatever you want to talk about, when it comes to the situation that's lasted over 400 years, we can't have a meaningful dialogue about it. We can't have meaningful, I guess, education about it because we don't want to go back into history and rip off Band-Aids. And, we can't move forward because
When you say we're not talking about us. I just want to be clear.
We're not talking about it. I mean both sides. I'm not saying that we the problem as to why that conversation is happening. We are absolutely not the problem. I think the people on the other side of the table are the problem because they don't want to deal with the bullets and I ain't talking about like legitimate bullets, but you have to deal with what actually happened. You got to come to the table and acknowledge it. And unfortunately, not enough want to come and acknowledge so that we can move past. But that doesn't happen. So, it's really like I talked about the Holocaust and everything in Nia's class. It's really hard for me to listen to them and them have like units, 3 months talking about this situation. And here we are. And instead of celebrating the successes of African Americans and trying to integrate that into your curriculum moving forward in science or technology or mathematics and all of the things that we have done or are currently doing, we get morning announcements or we can't have a conversation about actually teaching critical race theory at somewhat of a middle to high school level to give them a better understanding of why systems are in place and why people feel the way they feel because it's just too taboo. So, that don't, it really irks me. So, I find it hard to, I guess, empathize or, when these Holocaust conversations come up, it's like it's almost how the opioid epidemic came up for white folks, and everybody's up in arms, and I'm just like, nobody cared when crack was tearing down African American neighborhoods. Everybody was going to jail. Now we got rehab. So it's really hard. And not to say I'm not understanding, but it's like, I mean,
so
come on.
Part of that is this term. So when you say the term critical race theory, it's been weaponized.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. We're done here on the 13th floor where the furniture isn't always the best, but the views are amazing.